Hey everyone, and welcome to Inflight. I'm your host, Sol. Now, normally this would be the part where Norm would chip in and say, I'm Norm XP, but Norm and I couldn't find a time for this episode to record our little intro that we usually do, so we're not going to be having that for this episode of Inflight, but it's not going away, I promise. It'll be coming back soon. We'll be talking about some things that are happening in the world and in the flight simulation community soon. But we're just not able to right now. And I'm sorry about that if that's the section of the podcast that you enjoy the most. But it will be coming back, I promise. So we're just going to hop right into the interview so then you can hear Norm's voice again and also hear our wonderful guests. We had MJ and Cameron on. MJ is the CEO of iniBuilds, and Cameron is the lead developer at iniBuilds. Now, iniBuilds has been on everybody's radar quite a bit lately because they are planning to release an A300 600F for X-Plane 11, and it's very hotly anticipated because it's looking to be a really detailed aircraft and a great addition to the X-Plane long-haul aircraft selection, which is something that we haven't really gotten enough love from over the past few years. We've mostly been getting really great single aisle aircraft. Like, in my personal opinion, the Flight Factor A320 Ultimate is a great one, and who could forget the Zibo 737-800, which is an amazing single aisle aircraft. But INI is really bringing something special on the table, and I will say, after talking to them, the hype is real. I am really excited for their product. And I think you should be too after listening to our interview. Some things that are going to be coming up during the interview. We talk specifically about some A300 systems that are going to be introduced in the aircraft, and also some things that they have done behind the scenes from a developer standpoint, like where they have gotten some of their materials in order to make the aircraft as great as it can be, and little visual tweaks that they have done. My favorite part is when they actually talk about the screens of the plane. You'll have to listen to the episode in order to figure out what exactly I'm talking about. That's my little hint that you should listen to this entire episode. Anyway, we had a really great talk with them, covering tons of things from the way just aircrafts are design in general. We talked a lot about Airbus and their heritage and how the A300 is still very present today in many of the aircraft that they produce regularly today, such as the A380. They talk a little bit about the A380. So you'll have to stick around to hear about that. And we just had a generally great time with them. I know I learned a lot. I've never interviewed an aircraft developer who was willing to go this in depth with me about the entire process, and that was really nice and refreshing to have, and it was really eye-opening. iniBuilds is definitely a company that you should be keeping your eye on in the future because they have some great aircraft coming your way, and we are really excited to be able to have them on the show. So please welcome MJ and Cameron from iniBuilds. Thank you guys so much for coming online with us to speak with us during this crazy time. How are you all doing today?
Oh, we're doing good, thanks. Thank you very much for inviting us, Sol and Norm. My name is Ubaid. I'm the CEO at iniBuilds, and I'm joined with...
I'm Cameron, the lead technical developer at iniBuilds. Yeah, it's difficult times, but still we can try and make the best of it while we can, stuck at home.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it. That's the best way you can do it, is make the best of difficult times.
Exactly.
So when it gets better, it'll be even greater.
Yeah.
Welcome, guys. Welcome.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you on. I think you are one of our most high-profile guests so far, as I'm sure you have realized at this point that there is a lot of hype generated around your product. But before we get into that, let's get a little bit of a background so that people who are listening who don't know exactly who you are get a picture of your background experience and what brought you to this point. So who wants to start?
So no, likewise, thank you very much for having us, and we are really excited to be discussing our upcoming projects with you guys today.
Of course.
So as mentioned, my name is Ubaid. I'm the CEO at iniBuilds. And I think I'll take this opportunity to provide some of the listeners today a bit of background on iniBuilds, who we are, how we got started, and what brought us here today, and I'll sort of link that into how why Cameron's on board and how he's helping us, with the project. So we started back, well, iniBuilds started back in October 2018, with the view of making, GSX and dynamic lighting profiles, specifically for prepared 3D, and that market. And I came on board in December 2018 to sort of drive that vision forward. It was a business that was working on a very a low scale side, and I really saw the potential of how this could be a really good space for the users, in terms of creating some quality freeware content for prepared. There are a lot of airports in prepared that were made by developers, since FSX, and the GSX dynamic lighting profiles really do enhance the experience at the airport, and it was a space that we saw that wasn't really being done properly by any sort of other company. Since then we have grown exponentially. We have made thousands of profiles, and ever more recently, after the GSX dynamic lighting was a success, we moved into liveries, and livery creation, going from realistic liveries to bespoke custom design liveries, and that seems to be really popular with our users in both P3D and X-Plane. Since behind the scenes, while all that was happening, we announced that we were developing an A380 for X-Plane. We are quite a talented team, with various skill sets, and we've showcased a few things on the A380 previously. The A380, unlike many of the rumors on the forums, it does still exist. We are still actively developing for it. It's not going anywhere. It is very much in the forefront of our mind. But this sort of brings us up to where we are today. Everybody sort of knows, I hope they do now, of the A300. It's been showcased a few times in various
Oh yeah.
places, and that is the project that is number one on our mindset right now. It is the whole project and the way that it's been developed to date. Everyone can read the history about the project already. It's been well documented, but it is very much the forefront of how we want to move in as a business. And Cameron's going to speak a bit about that later, but that sort of is a 5 minute rendition of who we are, what we do, and where we are today. In terms of my background personally, I come from a business background. I've run a few businesses myself. My family is very business orientated, and sort of my vision as a CEO and the way that I like to drive, my company forward is really providing good, excellent customer service. And I really have seen some of the feedback that customers have provided in both prepared and X-Plane, some of the gripes that they've seen that they want out of their simulation add-ons that they simply just don't get. And I think me, and the messaging I try to provide within my organization is to really think about the end user in everything that we do. And that is the aim here, to make the customer and the client have the best experience possible, and anything that we can do to improve that, is what we will do. And that sort of brings us to the A300. Cameron will speak a bit about himself shortly, but he sort of came on to provide the pilot expertise to, again, come into our vision of providing the customer the best experience possible. So yeah, Cameron, I'll let you introduce yourself and how you're helping us.
Yeah, my name's Cameron. I've been in. I'll start off all the way back at when I started flight simming. It's probably I was started with FS9, then with FSX, and I think my first introduction to X-Plane was X-Plane 9. And then I was pretty hooked on X-Plane by X-Plane 10, actually. That was what got me. I was like, this is good. I really like this platform, and I was pretty interested in that. Then moved on, P3D and all this stuff. But meantime, in my own lifetime, was doing flight training at that point. I did my PPL sort of weekends, so it took forever, as you can imagine, waiting for a good VFR day. I remember it clearly, where I had to try and do my cross-country qualifying flight. It took 12 weeks in the UK to get a weekend that was good enough to go from one airport to another one, and then back again. So that's exactly when people say, it's a nice clear sky here in Arizona. Yeah, I wished that when I was in my PPL. But Anyway, so I was doing that. I went on, did sort of finished off my PPL myself, and then I went to flight school, one of the larger flight schools. Went through that, finished in late 2016, feels like a while ago now, and got a job commercially. Been flying commercially on the Airbus A320 for 3 years now. So I love the A320, but I have to say, I make it a mission. A300 is my new favorite Airbus. I hope
Oh,
one day I
wow.
can get to fly it. It is a very, very interesting aircraft, and that's what I was brought on to the team to do, is to give that technical aspect of. Now, the one thing I think everyone here is going to find interesting when they get their hands on the product, and I didn't truly understand this until I started the project. Yes, the A300 is a slightly older plane, but actually it's fascinating because it's basically a very early A320. I'm like, oh, I recognize that, and that,
Mhm.
and this, and that, and there's some numbers in the A320 where you're like, why did they use that number? Why did they do that? It doesn't make any sense. And I look at the A300, it's like, that's why they do it. So you can see the Airbus heritage and lineage, and that's what I was brought along to put my expertise from that area into making this product what I would expect to see if I was flying and operating this aircraft day to day. And we need those systems that you operate every day to be as good as they would be when I'm actually flying every day. So that's what I was brought on board to do in terms of the lead technical developer, working with everyone else to make sure that the standard is there that we expect to try and push. And you've probably seen with the previews, obviously you've seen some of the pictures and some very sneak preview of the systems, but we're pushing for that next level.
So
Now,
you're kind of touching on like product development there, where
Hmm.
you try to look at what a customer wants and just like immediately have that in there. What are some of the like, let's say a top 4 of what you really make sure that you have in every single aspect of the A300 so that the customer will enjoy your product?
So I think that there are two ways that we can evaluate this. We can base it off. Personally, I think what is currently available on the market, and
Mm.
what do we want available on the market. Do we how and this, the words are thrown around like study level, and how good is systems, texturing, sounds, and that view, in my opinion, is very subjective for us to say this is what the standard should be, because everyone has a different expectation of flight sim. Now,
Yeah.
the way that we view in our mind is, in every single aspect, to make it as realistic and as good as we possibly can, and to make it accessible to a whole range of users. And we feel that we've done that in trying to make the systems as realistic as possible. So you're going to give that high fidelity simmer that who operate the aircraft by looking at the FCOM, you know, allowing them to simulate certain procedures properly. But we're also reaching out to those consumers who are looking for something more visually pleasing, ensuring that our texturing and modeling is up to the best possible standard. But also from a sounds perspective, I think the sounds of an aircraft and the audio that you hear is also a really massive, crucial immersion factor. And we're really putting a lot of time into that. So I think when someone asks us what our top, your question, what is our top 4 aims? I think personally, from my view, just trying to make it as best as possible with, based on the product and the on the line feature that we're trying to deliver. I mean, Cameron can speak a bit more about that too.
Yeah.
in your
So,
in,
oh, sorry.
in you guys' opinion, real quick, are
Yeah.
flight simmers the hardest set of people to please when you're doing a project like this?
I don't know. I think I'd say they're difficult, but then also there is an expected standard in flight sim, and it's people want their product to be the best it can be in every area, and that's, as Ube was saying, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to basically give it so that person that wants this and wants that and wants this, because there's people want planes, and this is what I love about flight sim is different people fly planes for different reasons, as you're saying, for the systems, for the visuals, for the sounds, for this. But we want to try and make it so that any of those users can pick up our plane and go, you know what, this actually covers what I was expecting. And I think it's maybe difficult to please, but maybe sometimes they're right. We want to try and push it to that next level.
And just to add on that, your supplementary question on our flight sim is difficult to please. I would say, I wouldn't say there is an aspect of difficult to please. I think a lot of people have an expectation and are perhaps promised certain things, and sometimes those things don't come to fruition. And I understand where that frustration comes from. I have said, personally, as just a user in Flight Sim, have really looked forward to an add-on sometimes, and the output's not there. And I think from that perspective, we are really trying to, what we say we will deliver is what we will deliver, and really just try to build a really good relationship with our consumers and our clients. And hopefully, with the limited screenshots we provided, the I hope the community is realizing that we are trying to approach this in a very different manner, to perhaps how things have been done previously.
Yeah, and I think to follow up on that as well, like we were talking about the word study level. It's an interesting phrase. I actually don't know the full history. I know that it was started to use. Oh, actually, when would you guys say it was first heard in the sim world?
I first heard it around early X-Plane 10 once Flight Factor started coming onto the market.
Yeah, I think
But
that's right.
I also wasn't really into the FSX scene too much, so I don't really know where it got into there. I entered in X-Plane 10, but I would say when Aerosoft also started coming into the market, that's when it also started to get played around in that area.
Yeah,
So like around the same time.
I think that's right as well. And you hear this phrase a lot, and I find it an interesting phrase because I think often, when you see something for sale, a branded product on a shelf, it has like 4K, HDMI, any of these standards, they're a certified standard. So someone has sat back and gone, that met X qualification to be told that. Whereas with study level, as we were saying before, it's very subjective. Someone's idea of study level is definitely not some other person's idea of study level, and vice versa. So that's why we're trying to focus more on the line. Like, what do you use on the line every day? And that needs to be the best it can be. And if that meets that person's idea of study level, brilliant. And we're hoping that it will meet everyone's level of that. But I find the phrase, it's an interesting one because it brings up a lot of conversations with different people where you're like, what do you mean by that? But then that's where we're trying to basically say, look, the things that you use, the things you're going to interact with are going to be the best they can possibly be that we can make. I think that's important.
So to describe the A300, would you rather use a phrase, as you said before, high fidelity? Because that's what I started using now. I stopped using the word study level because, as you said, there's so much to cover. But high fidelity, would that be a word you use?
I mean, I personally would stand by the product and say it is a high fidelity simulation of the Airbus A300. But I think the phrase that you've seen already from the shots we provide is the A300 on the line, and that's the way that the iniBuilds products will always be marketed. It is going to be marketed as the on the line, because we cannot tell a consumer or a client what they should expect from the product, because it is up to their own interpretation of how that simulation was done. We want to provide our customers the ultimate day-to-day experience as a pilot in command would on their flying day, and that's what that's the vision in which that we're developing these products. So yes, I would agree. It is a high fidelity simulation of the aircraft.
Yeah, I must say that I love what you were saying earlier on about customer oriented, and it just warms my heart to hear you guys say that. That's what's been missing with some of the add-ons, and just having you, the builder, say that to me right now makes me feel good about this airplane. I mean, God forbid, this is the very first airplane I've ever been on ever as a passenger or anything otherwise. Is the A300, straight out of Kingston, Jamaica to JFK.
Oh, cool.
Oh yes, so I am looking forward to this airplane and having my hands on and flying it. And from the previews that you guys have shown, I'm impressed. Let me just get it out the way. I'm very impressed with it.
No, I mean, thank you very much for your comments, and it truly does mean a lot. And we don't always have the opportunity to respond to all the comments, but one thing that I want to directly reach out to any of the listeners is that we do read all comments. We may not get an opportunity to respond, but any feedback that you give us, we really do take it on board, and it is really taken seriously. And this isn't some corporate standpoint that I'm trying to say that we care about the customers. We really do, and we really want to build a strong relationship with the client and consumer, because I think the way that we're trying to do things differently is that I think from everyone on our team, we've all been a consumer and we always will be consumers. And I think we are really trying to make sure that, especially our focus right now is an X-Plane, is to really improve that developer consumer relationship, because the client is going to pay an X amount of money for any product, and for them to be told that they're wrong, or the developer's always right, is something that it's insulting in my opinion. And you wouldn't really see that in any other industry, let alone in the real world. So why should it happen in flight sim? And that's something that's always stuck with me as an issue. And that's why, really, thank you for your comments, because it's something that we are really trying to work on to improve.
I also want to add as well that I have a lot of respect for the way that you're running your business as well, because it seems as if this INI is being run as a business and not as a group of developers. Like having your customers be your top priority, those are the companies that I love the most, even if their products aren't incredible. If they're really communicative towards me and they really want to reach out to me, then I end up loving them. And I think that you guys are going to really go a long way with that. And I also wanted to touch on what you said earlier. You said that I think it was you, MJ, who said we cannot tell a customer what to expect. That is up to them. Like I I really respect that way of looking at things, and I think that that is. I think that what you guys have here is actually something a little bit larger than what you're making it, where you're allowing a new voice to be, what am I trying to say here? You're allowing a new voice to be heard in flight simulation, because we've focused so hard on study level and all of this, but we've never focused on like the individual opinion. And I just wanted to share that I think that you
No,
guys, what you're doing here is like a lot larger than you're actually like
they're
putting it off
basically
to be.
they're upping the bar or changing the bar basically because for a long time we've suffered in X-Plane with add-on and add-on developers where there's one thing or the other missing for whatever reason, and as you said earlier, there was no attention paid to us, the end user, at the point. Listen to you guys talk about this and listen and looking at the product itself and the way the approach that you're using now with it. I like it. I mean, X-Plane is becoming alive. I mean, that's my only sim. I know you guys do P3D and other sims and so forth, but
Mm.
X-Plane for me is now coming alive with this development coming on board, with this development team coming on board and putting into, and using their expertise and putting it the way they see it. As you guys are end users, so you understand from both sides. And so I like it. I'm excited for it. I'm excited
No,
for this change.
no, thank you so much for both of your comments. It's really good for me to hear that the efforts that we've tried to put in since day one are being noticed. But also, this is not to say that what has happened since is not good. There are some really quality add-ons in Explain at the moment, and without the work done by our fellow other developers, the market wouldn't be where it's at. I think there is a lot of hard work that's gone in, but we really want to try and do things our own way, and if that means that changing some of the expectations and changing the consumer developer relationship, then that's that. But thank you again. It really does warm my heart to hear that.
Oh yeah, we need it. I mean, Microsoft 2020 is around the corner, and X-Plane might be pushed off to the left or the right. But in the meantime, having this kind of development coming on board is perfect for us. So hey, I appreciate it. We appreciate it definitely.
So we've already shown our listeners how much we love you guys and appreciate you guys after everything that you've said so far. So let's change the subject a little bit so that we don't keep on dwindling on one thing. So your on the line products are very, very detailed, and that is evident in any blog post that you read. It's very, very extensive, and it's clear that you guys know what you are talking about. um One thing that I haven't been able to ask any of my guests yet, because we haven't had somebody who's as involved with aircraft development as you are, in particular with
Mm.
tube liners. How does the development process go? How do you look for documentation on the aircraft? How do you know that something is right and what you want it to be? Like, spill the tea, pretty much.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
this
So
ought to be interesting for the A300. So I want to hear this one. Go
no.
ahead.
So sure. So I think the main from my point of view anyway, when a project is brought forward and we discuss whether it is something we want to do or not. I think the main thing is, maybe this would differ from an aircraft developer to aircraft developer, but because we have the view of the customer in mind and the best experience possible, we will not waste our time on something that we can't do properly. So we're not going to start a project if we don't have the appropriate data, the appropriate documentation of the way that the aircraft is supposed to behave, because that's wasting our time and efforts for something that is not going to be accurate. So that's the number one conversation that needs to be had internally in any development team, I think, is what are the resources and the data available that you have on hand. And I think the minute you have the resources and the data available, I think, not, this is very biased view, but I think I have a really talented team. I think, from that point onwards, it's pretty much, getting the job done. I mean, if we have the, the FCOM and, the AMM, two, the two main manuals that we use, the minute you've got those, I mean, I guess you just need to have a really talented team. And Cameron has been a tremendous help. He's an extremely knowledgeable individual. He's a pilot in real life, but he really takes the data and the information that are in these documents and really brings them to life in the sim. And everything that is in these documents have been accurately displayed in the sim. I would say 99 to 100%. So, Cameron, anything else you wanted to add on that? Because this is your space.
I'll follow up with this because now some of the interesting things, when you're learning an aircraft, I'm sure we've all done it, where you get a hold of an FCOM and you think, I have it, the document answers all questions. Not quite. It's like a little bit of back history about the FCOMs. Now, if I tell you this, you might have noticed it before. They're originally Airbus ones I'm on about now, obviously. It'd be a bit weird if Boeing did this, but they're written in French and they're translated to English. And sometimes you read it, you go, what? And you read it again, you go, what did you? Okay. And then you have to read it 4 or 5 times. You go, okay, I think I get what they're saying now. I get it. Some of it's perfect, but some of them doesn't quite translate right. So with the FCOM, you can achieve a lot. It's telling you how it should work in an ideal situation. Now, obviously, the real world and the real aircraft isn't an ideal situation. I'll give you an example with the 320. So you read the FCOM of the A320. It states, when you put flaps out, the plane will not balloon due to the advanced Airbus fly-by-wire system. You think, wow, that's very good. Good one, Airbus. Nice design. First time you fly the plane, you select flaps 2 and it balloons. And you go to the guy, why is it ballooning? Well, physics. They didn't really get it right. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'll give you an idea of the disparity. So the FCOM states in the A320, this is what I'm like, it won't balloon at all. And I found in my personal experience, it will go up to 700 feet per minute in the climb.
Ooh.
So now I'll bring it back to the A300. So we have the FCOM, we have the AMMs, we have lots of other documentation, but we also have other people in contact who fly them on the line. So we're using a combination of Airbus documentation and also real pilots' experiences of what they get on the line and feeding that into the sim. And also lots of, other documentation that we've gathered around that are undocumented features. You'll read the FCOM and you'll watch a video of someone doing it in the plane and you go, why is that different? And then you go, okay, it's because of this. Okay, there's that. Okay, we need to make that do it in the sim. Now, is that needed? Well, as an end user, you're probably not going to notice. If it works like the FCOM, then great. Then that's probably the only documentation that sort of an end user is going to have access to of sufficient standard. But we're really trying to push it that this plane is really like what you would have on the line when you're flying as a pilot, not the FCOM. And I've personally seen it in the sim where I've had a plane, I think, why does that look strange? And I realized that they've copied the diagram from the FCOM. And the diagram of the FCOM has been made larger so you can read it easier. It's actually larger than the real PFD. Oh, wow. So you're there like, I know what they did. Fair enough. It's the documentation they had, but we want to try and take it above that level. And that's really where we go with it.
So your role basically is critical where you're translating from a hard document to a real world, basically. They're somewhere in the middle between hard document and real world experience.
Yeah, and there is always things that, like, okay, I've never flown the A300, but I know how an airliner operates, and I know how an Airbus works. And what I think people will find interesting about the A300 is just how similar it is to the Airbuses that you've seen. And you can see where their ideas came from. And this is a very, very rough description of what the A300 is like. Imagine if you get a 767 and a very, very early 320, push them together. And there you go. That's the A300. And systems-wise and everything, you have all aspects of that. And that's where we go to make this product just the best it could be, basically.
Do you ever find yourself feeling like you're problem solving in the moment the way that the engineers of the A300 were problem solving themselves to try to figure out how to make it?
Yeah, I think we've had it once or twice, and actually it's a really nice, really, really nice feeling where you're thinking, okay, we know how it works. We want to make it work. exactly as we want, and then the FCOM isn't describing enough. So we go through all our different pieces of information, right? And then we build the system, and we're talking a very initial test here, and then we compare it to real world data that we have, and you go, it matches.
Mm-hmm.
We've made the system work just like the real thing, which is a really nice feeling, because you've made it not only look like it's working, it is working. And it does. The problem solving is one of the really enjoyments that I get from it, is when you hit a wall, and it happens with every development team. I'm sure they've all come across it, or anyone who's ever tried to make anything. You hit a wall and you think, how am I going to get past this?
Yeah.
But every single time we've got past it, and you look back at it and you go, that's cool. And I'm sure you can all appreciate this. Flying a plane that you've helped develop is very satisfying. It's like you fly around and you go, I know how that works. I don't know how this works. And that's really nice. And like, you fly it, and it's really, really, it's actually I'd never thought it'd be as much fun as it is, but it is, just flying it around. And especially in these later stages when we have a product that we're testing around with, you just go, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
And I think from my perspective, because I'm not involved in the day-to-day conversations. I'm there for the team meetings and critical decisions. However, seeing the progress that they've made, just to talk a bit about the project, this started in around October, November time, and we're in April, and it is truly magnificent, the work that some of the development team has done in such a short space of time, getting such a high quality, high fidelity working add-on. I think in my view, I think a lot of especially the iniBuilds working group, the set team of beta testers that are there, we've received glowing feedback from all angles. I think I tell my development team every day, but again, I would like to personally thank them, because in this such short space of time to get something that good, in my opinion, I personally have never seen in Flight Sim. And I think a lot of people are going to be very looking forward to it.
Yeah, you certainly have Norm and I's attention.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just good to hear. I mean, I was thinking, yeah, that's a short span of time to bring a product from inception to market, but apparently you guys have a good gel team working together over there. You just
Yeah, I mean, I would say we have a really really fantastic team, and we all really work well together. And I think all of us have again the common goal in mind of, in more so, not just this is our first product and we've got something to prove of, just trying to make this as good as we can for flight simmers. And I think when you have that unique common goal, and everyone working towards that, I think everyone just works off that energy, and it works really well.
Yeah, that's what we find as well. When you're doing the systems, you're working together with each other, and you can see that the end goal in sight. And it just really works when you're working together and you get something done, and you just think yes, and you just move on, and you just use that energy to push through to get it all. And I'm amazed of what we've been able to achieve in the time frame we have. And I think when everyone gets hold of the product, they'll also show that this is the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, it shows too, because I mean, obviously other aircraft are more complicated in terms of their system, because as we progress, things are being monitored more and more, so there's more and more to simulate. And but I mean, you guys really show that if you have the passion there, that you're really able to do anything in the nick of time. I mean, I actually did not catch on to the fact that you guys started working on this like just last year. That's crazy. That's something I don't think I could ever like fathom doing.
The interesting thing with the A300 is, because obviously, as we stated, the A380 is still ongoing. So we have aspects of possibly one of the most complicated airliners in the world.
Yeah.
But when it came across the A300, it's a complex mix of, when you look at the overhead panel, it's enormous. I have no idea why they made the overhead panel. It's just huge and just full of everything. So what from a development point of view, that makes the A300 difficult but also really enjoyable to fly is it has both analog and digital. And it has all of that. So you have to make both. Like, and I'm not speaking down of anyone who's made this, but when you go in a 737 now, or even an A320, I look at the overhead and I go, oh wow, there's only 2 fuel pumps, not this many. So there's only 2 batteries, not 3. Oh, there's only this and that. And, oh, nice. And then but then the thing that I don't think people realize, and I want to get across in this to all the listeners, is the A300, original A300, is an old plane. The A300-600, it's not an old plane. It's actually basically can do everything an A320 can do.
Oh,
It
wow.
can do. It has the ECAM screen on the bottom right hand, rather than being on top of each other, has all the same system display pages. They are the same. That's where they came from the 300 to the 320, and it can do anything. It can do Autolands, Cat 3 Bravo. It's got everything in it that the 320 has, which is why it's very interesting to develop. And I think when people get hold of it, they'll be like, this thing was advanced. It first flew in 1981, by the way, with all this, which is it's pretty good going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talked about earlier how you don't make a product unless you know you have everything you need for it. When was that moment for the A300? When was like the green light? Like, we are gonna do this. We have everything, and we really want to do this.
Um, yeah, sure. So essentially, to talk a bit about a background for those who may not be aware, but the A300 was not in our mind frame and mindset up until around September last year. We announced the A380, and things were going really well, and things are still going quite fantastically. And when we do provide an update on that, I think a lot of people will be pleased, an extensive one. But we were progressing with the A380, but there were certain things that we really, as I said, the customer is in mind here, and we're not going to do something that is not going to be useful at the end. And we realized that the A380 is taking slightly a bit more time than we wanted in certain aspects. So how best can we use our time? And at the time, the Roger 39 was used on the Explain forum, and he had this wonderful A300 exterior model. And we had a few discussions with him, and we were like, the A380 is being done by certain members of the team. We have a certain aspect of the team that is free to work on a project. How can we work best? And his mindset at the time was, I have this really nice model. I really want to do this for the community. I really want to get something done here. And we were like, we're of the same mindset. So for it was just a match made in heaven, and that was at the point where we had to take a decision internally of what documents do we have, what data do we have to accurately rendition this aircraft. And it was all a green light, and we brought Roger along, and that's how the A300 started. But I guess this question is more pertinent for perhaps the A380. And we only really to announce the A380 and started progressing with that once we had collected all that data. And so yeah, that provides maybe a bit of an explanation behind those two.
Yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
Yeah,
It
and
seems to me that I'm sorry, Sol. It seems
no,
to
go
me
for it.
that I don't know. Maybe it's the explained thing, but we somehow prefer older vintage aircraft in explain over the newer ones for some reason. I mean, does that make sense? Because I hear you say A380, and I get
Mm,
asked a lot about, hey, when are you going to fly an A380? And I say when there's a good one to fly. But it
mm,
still doesn't get me going as an older airplane, an MD-80, a MD-11, A300. Those get me going because I don't know, it's something that don't fly anymore a lot, and so just to be able to have it and see it in the sim, is a good thing. I mean, do you find that
yeah.
the
I mean,
older ones are more in demand or more
I
requested?
mean, apart from the like 100 messages I personally get on Discord about is the A380 cancelled, if we move away from that, I mean, I think that the current X-Wing market. I think if you look at some fantastic developers at the moment, I think FlyJSim is my personal favorite. I think their add-ons are really quite beautiful, to be honest. And
Mhm.
I think once you've seen how good a add-on, that, and the IXG in its time, I think when you have a look at those classic jets that were made, I think you're like, wow, okay, so this is the real standard, and this is really, really, really nice. So I think maybe that has something to do with it. But I think from my end, I think a lot of people, I would say a lot of people like old jets, a lot of people like modern jets. But personally, as a company, we receive a plethora of requests about the A380. And I think as the A300 gets more known, around the community, I guess we'll get more questions on that more. Um, but as a personal favorite, I think that again, the A300, I've personally fallen in love with it, and I was on the fence about it in the beginning, but as an airliner and just learning more about it, and working with some of the documents, it's a new personal favorite for me. But I think that will probably change if you ask me when we get back on the A380 properly.
Well, see, that's the key. I don't mean to cut you, but that is the
Yeah,
key where with the older airplanes, at first you're like, well, it's oh,
yeah,
but when you get to actually learn it and actually fly it efficiently and know the systems in it, you
Yeah.
fall in love with the thing, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping so.
And I think from our side, Cameron's mentioned this many times before. It's like, especially working on both aeroplanes, one of the first Airbuses and one of the most recent Airbuses, you really see the story of Airbus as a business, as a company, and some of the work put in. Cameron, you've seen this first time with the A320
Yeah,
from the
yeah.
A300. A lot of it is still the same. A lot of the core technology, which is really astonishing.
Yeah, it's absolutely the same with the A300. It's quite funny where I've looked around and I've gone, I recognize that gauge, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, I know that gauge, and then I go look at the 380. I'm like, there it is. And
Yeah.
here's another little bit. Now this is slightly nerdy, but maybe people will enjoy it.
Oh, I love
If
that
you
stuff.
if you look at the 350 and you look at the 380, how you engine mode selector, right? On a 320 they moved it to below where the thrust levers are. You just click it what you need. Fair enough. That's the way they do it. 350, it's the same thing. On the 380 they ran out of room. So sorry, on the A380 they ran out of room. So they thought, where are we going to put it? And they put it on the overhead, and they used this really large knob. And I always thought, it looks weird. And I looked at it the other day. I was like, it's because it's from the A300. So you can see how they are both, even though they're a lot apart, there's a lot of heritage and interest in there. And I think when people get their hand on the A300, it's kind of going to be like, if you want to call it this, like a gateway into like the older airliners, because like I mentioned before, it's amazingly advanced for the time. So if anyone's flown a 320, 319, whatever in X-Plane, you could pretty readily come across the A300, do a bit of reading and be on your way and operate it in a pretty normal, I mean, to go a little bit technical, it has VNAV in descent that will respect constraints. It can do lots and lots of very complex things. But if you don't want to do that, that's fine. It knows, okay, you can do it in an older vintage way. You can do whatever you want. But it is actually very, very advanced. So it's kind of, I don't want to say it, but it is basically the best of both worlds. It's vintage and modern all at the same time, and it's a crossover period. So it's a fascinating product.
And I think just to add on that, I think that's why we're really excited for it, because it's sort of going to bridge. There is this big X-Plane market that is really for vintage jets, but also you've got this perhaps new emerging side, which are really looking forward to the modern jets. And I think this is the plane that's going to bridge both of those markets and really provide a good mix of both. And we're really excited.
I think it's really interesting to. Sorry to cut you off, Norm.
No, sorry.
But I think it's really interesting to see that, you guys are also learning a lot about Airbus as a company while doing this. Like, it's like what Cameron mentioned with the engine mode selector. It's like they were like, oh, we did it on the old plane, so why don't we just like put it back where it was last time? And it's kind of just like, it's like the easy way, but it's also like, well, it worked, so might as well continue it.
Yeah, exactly. And have a look at an A350 and 380 glare shield. It goes straight, and then it drops, and then it goes straight again. And then you go back in the A300, you're like, oh, okay. so they did that. There it is. Then they did the 320 and 330 and went, nah, I like the old one. And they went back. So you can actually see there's so many. And there's even, it's very, very strange. There's even certain buttons, I won't go into full detail about it, that you look at that they did on the A300. They didn't bother doing it on the A320. And then they did it back on the A380. So this is like they really drew from this heritage and their whole business. But what's very interesting, as I was mentioning before about, it's kind of like a Boeing and an Airbus mix. They weren't fully committed, or they didn't have a vision, the full Airbus design philosophy when they made the A300. Mm-hmm. So there are some things that are basically from a Boeing, and you can see that they're mixed together. So I would say, if you know how to fly a Boeing, you can fly this. If you know how to fly Airbus, you can fly the A300 as well. So it's what I mean. It's a good bridge between everything, and it's just fascinating.
So a little bit of trivia that I learned, that the A300 is the first twin-engine ETOPS wide-body airplane. Yes,
that's right. Yeah, it is.
Absolutely.
It is.
I didn't know that. I literally just learned that within the last couple of weeks. I was like, what? I thought it was some kind of American carrier that did that first. You know, Boeing or McDonnell Douglas. No, it was all tri-jets, 3 engines or 4 engines. People are like, we can't trust engines to go over water. And all of a sudden, A300 came out, and it's the first one. Now, every airplane is that. 777, 787, A321, yeah, it's good.
It
So
is,
that's a little bit of trivia there.
it's great. And the one thing, now this is the one thing I think people are going to be, I wouldn't say surprised at, because it's realistically modeled. The A300 is enormously overpowered, hilariously so, which is really fun in the sim, really fun.
Huh.
Like, and let's give you an idea, okay? At maximum takeoff weight, so this is only applicable at maximum takeoff weight, it has a higher thrust to weight ratio than Concorde.
What?
Yeah,
What?
at full weight. So
Oh,
at full,
boy.
and I'll give you an idea compared to an early A340, clearly not the most powerful plane in the world, but still, if you compare the early 340 with the A300, 3 times thrust to weight ratio at maximum takeoff. It can take off if it needs to from a 1,600 meter runway at 145 tons, which is around 300,000 pounds. That's
So
impressive.
So what you're saying is that I should expect some crazy climb performance.
Yeah, and that's what you have to manage as well. This is the thing that brings it back again to on the line. It's a modern plane, but it's also an old plane, and it's also a powerful plane. You can probably see where there are problems that arise here. It's like, so you have to manage it well. And this is what the people who fly them on the line tell us. They say, if you don't put it into vertical speed quite early and get it calm, it will bust the altitude by up to 450 feet.
Ooh.
So you have to be aware. And, we've done what we can. And to model that, sort of, you have to look after it. But it's also modern and old, all at the same time. But it's the character of it is it's just so powerful. It's great. The first time I put the numbers in, we knew the numbers were right. And I took off and I was like, are you sure this is right? Like, we had to run numbers in. Like, did it really? Yeah, okay. And I've taken off from Luton before, and I've seen it. And me and the captain actually both commented on it. We were like, that seems weird, but now it makes sense. So DHL operate from Luton in A300s. And so we were going there's 2 intersections in Luton, very short runway, around, I only know meters, unfortunately. It's around 1,700 meters, so pretty short. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to go for a longer intersection. And then this A300 went, no, we don't need that. And we were like, really? Really? You don't need the long one? Okay, fine. We were like, this guy's going to go off the end of the runway. Anyway, they lined up and they were gone. We both looked at each other like, okay, weird. Oh, wow. And now after I've done this development, I'm like, that makes sense. They probably just like, that toga, let's go. It's just absolutely unbelievably powerful. I love the fact that we've been able to capture that in the sim. And it's great. And I can't wait for people to be like, is this right? Yeah, it's right. Yeah, some of the first people that flew it in the sim, like, are you sure? I'm like, I'm sure. It's right.
I can just imagine you guys releasing it and then like going on your forums page, your support page, and they're like, climb performance way too high. Like, nope, that's right.
No, it's correct. And this is the thing, again, coming back to the customer focus thing, if someone says that, fair enough, I thought that. Yeah. It's like the first time, so we just explained to them, no, it's correct, and there's no need to. I've seen it a few times where people get berated for asking a question like, a stupid question. It's like, but we all ask questions.
Developer.
We all ask questions sometimes. Yeah, as a developer, like, I know the A300 very, very well, man, and the whole team do. And if we're the ones answering the questions on the forum, someone might ask a question, we're like, you stupid, like, well, you should know that. But no, because we know the A300 very well. This is someone's first interaction with it, and they've come across something that they don't think is correct. Completely within their right to ask that question, and completely within their right to expect a good response, which is what we want to get across as well.
I feel like questions that are seen as like presumed to be stupid questions are often actually the best questions to ask.
They are.
Then you learn the most. Because, like, I mean, as you said, like with my example, even though like that might seem like a stupid question or like a stupid comment, like MJ has like experienced that before and he would think it's wrong, and then it would be a really good learning experience. It's like, oh my god, like that's crazy. I didn't know that the A300 had crazy climb performance until you told me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I've had it personally as well. Like, I don't, whenever I'm on an online profile or whatever, I don't like to say what I do, because it just brings across other, people will just assume everything I say is correct, which I can be as wrong as the next person in line. So I've personally reached out for questions, comments, or support to other developers, and I've come back with a response where I'm like, wow, okay, thanks,
Yeah.
sort of thing. Like, whatever.
Yep.
Like, I feel pretty bad now, and I'm not gonna. I don't want to say, hey, but I'm a whatever. Drop the, I'm a pilot card, because I don't like doing that. Because they should listen to me as a customer anyway, and if they want to have further interactions and work out what I know, fine, that's fine. But yeah, it's just one of those things I've noted.
So, if you don't mind, would you be willing to speak about the difference in the process of developing the A380 versus the A300 and how that has been for you as a company?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess I wouldn't say there are. I mean, to be completely honest, I mean, Cameron, you can comment as well. I think there haven't been any sort of fundamental differences. There's not something that's tremendously different from the workflow processes that we do. The A380 is in a stage where we're doing certain things. And the A300 is obviously in a more advanced stage than the A380. But I think from us as a business and as in terms of development, my main focus in the beginning was to try and establish set processes and workflows, and a sort of supply chain of this is the way we're going to do things. And I think we work very different. I can't comment on how other people work. Is that we have certain things that we would do at certain times, and we're not just doing things in a random sporadic way with no goal or aim at the end of it. I think we have certain priorities that we have that we complete. But in terms of how does that specifically differ from the A300 A380, it personally, I don't see a big difference. It's just obviously it's a different plane, has different data, but the processes and the workflows and the methodology behind that is the same. I mean, Cameron, do you have anything else you'd like to say on that?
No, it's pretty much really like a plane is a plane. Like you can build them all the same way, but I guess exactly what just said is correct. But the only thing that would be different from a standpoint of development between the 300 and the 380 is, as I mentioned, the A300 has a lot of analog gauges.
Mm.
Now, you wouldn't think this, but analog gauges are actually quite tricky in a sim. You
How's
have
that?
to have everything there. They have to have the correct information going into them. They have to be textured. They have to be animated. They have to do this. They have to do that. There's a lot of work that goes into that, and that can create difficulty. But it's obviously all achievable, and you have to tie it all together. But with the 380, you have a lot of digital screens, so there's more. I would say there's more of a code aspect to that rather than design element. But the process is the same. There's still the same people doing the same things in the same order. So realistically, the only major difference is the A380s has a lot more. You've probably seen the screens where they're drop downs, and eventually the 380 is going to be able to be, the 350, sorry, has got the touch screen. So I think that's what they probably intended with the 380, but I think they've just kind of gone time out on that one. So that's probably not going to happen. So anyway, but that's what they intended this whole interface to be. So there's more of that aspect rather than the sort of other aspect. But an electrical system is an electrical system. It's a lot bigger on a 380, but also the A300, it's not a small plane. It's a wide body. It's still pretty complicated. Like I said, when I go back in the 320 and I look at the overhead, I go, that's cute.
Yeah.
like only two. And the one bonus with the 380 is Airbus have truly streamlined their design and their ideas. So they're a lot more concise and clear with what their design language and ideas were. Whereas with the A300, you can tell there were some people who were like, should we do this? And then someone else was like, why don't we do that? And they both went, why don't we do both? It's like, So then you're just like, so then you have to make both of that work. Where, so there's challenges to both, but the process is the same. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you put it perfect. I guess process is the same. It's just different challenges are met with both. But I think the thing that we found, especially and me personally, is that once we've got the good processes and good workflows in place, I think whatever challenges are met with both are respectively handled in an appropriate manner, which I think is fantastic from our side.
I mean, here's a technical development question. Which is harder to make look more realistic, a glass cockpit or an analog cockpit? Like when I'm sitting in front of a sim looking at the analog versus a glass cockpit, I tend to believe the glass cockpit does not look as real. I mean, do you guys find that, or do you differ from that?
From a designing perspective, our designer, he's pretty famous in the X-Plane community, Todemak. He does all of our texturing for us internally in the cockpit. And I would say that it's taken a bit longer for the analog gauges, simply because we are going right into the minute details with little specks of dirt on some of the some of the numbers, making them unique across all the gauges. And I think from that point of view, making analog gauges and designing them from a texturing perspective does take a bit longer than some of the digital screens. Um, but I think again it comes down to the point of different challenges have different things. So with the digital screens, it's more about, once they have been designed, using code, placing them in the right place, and making sure they operate in the correct way. um but I mean, personally, I think for me, I like I've fallen in love with the analog gauges, and the work gone into them. I think if you really look, you know closely into them, they look pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd follow up with the same thing as well. That yeah, both are difficult to make look good, but I think if you put the same workflow, if you put the same time in, you can make both look as good as you want them to be. Because there are technical challenges behind both, and the design work that needs to go into a glass cockpit. You still need to have the correct fonts, the correct borders, the correct everything like that. And there's a lot more of that to do on a glass cockpit. And I will say this right now, because we are going to get people who ask those questions. It's not a stupid question, like I said before. The A300 can't draw curved lines on the ND.
Oh.
It draws straight lines. It just can't. It has no processing power to draw a curve. So that means there's less work to do, clearly, because you don't need a curve. Whereas the 380, you do need a curve. But then you need the analog gauges. So I would say they almost like balance out. But that is the thing to notice. No curves.
And again, just thinking about it in my head now, like you said, the technical point, we have tried to model, the CRT screen effect. It's a curved screen on the A300. Then they're not going to be flat. And in sim, you can sort of see we have modeled the curve on all of the screens. Whereas in the A380, they're pretty flat. So again, it is, goes back to Sol's question. Although they are different, the processes are the same. It's just different challenges are met to try and accurately represent the plane in the sim.
Yeah, I think people are going to really like the screens in the A300, because we have the radius of the arc is correct. The curve of the CRT, and it actually has the image over the physical arc and then a piece of glass in front of it. When you look on the angle at the side, you can see the glass. You can see the front, sort of, I guess you'd call it the bow face or the front face of the CRT tube, and then you can see the image being displayed on that with the correct border. And
so there's layers there.
Yeah, it's physically made like the screen is made. And when you look at it head on, you're like, oh yeah, it looks like a screen. Then you look at it at an angle, and that's some of the most satisfying things I have is when you're at night, because it's more noticeable at night, sort of, and you have it dimmed down, and you can see the curve of the little thing like that. You get very, very close, you can actually see sort of your track line curve, because it's going along the curve of the screen. And it's the same thing actually with the MCDUs. They also have curved CRT screen.
That's like some unprecedented detail. My God. Can you like talk a little bit more about some of the eye candy in the A300 and like what you've done with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think from an initial setback, I think that one of the most recent screenshots we showed was the cockpit at night. And I think just as an initial look, I think the texturing is to an extremely high standard. But then when you delve in further into that, as Cameron mentioned, we have taken, we've put special time and attention to representing the CRT screens, and making sure that is a feature that is noticeable, with the layers and as such, as Cameron explained. But also I think, throughout the cockpit, again, with the user in mind, with the on the line branding that we have, there are certain delays that is my personal favorite in terms of an immersion factor, is that, as you would in real life, selecting a battery to come on is not an instant process. It's not switch it on, and seeing the flickering of screens and the delays throughout the plane. And I think, going back to the systems, one thing that I found really cool when I was showing it for the first time was the electrical system and how complex it is. And then I think with many developers and X-Plane, you're like, certain things run off bus 1 and certain things run off bus 2. And when I was shown for the first time the different dependencies of the aircraft on bus 1 and bus 2, and how the half of the plane literally just goes black with bus 2 not engaged, and the effect that goes into that. I think that is another massive immersion feature that we've introduced into the aircraft that's not previously been seen before, which I think is, just brings that to another level for the user. But I think by far the best thing on the plane is the delays that we've implemented. And I think that's going to be a really cool feature that people will enjoy. Just got to make sure that they don't double click a battery or something to think that they haven't switched on in the first instance.
Yeah. That's the thing is with the delays as well. It's not just me going 3 seconds, 2 seconds. It's documented. Again, the FCOM won't say. The FCOM will say it comes on instantly, which is a lie. So then you have to go and write. How long does it actually take? Okay, it takes on average between this and that. Okay, let's make it do that. So not all the delays are the same because obviously systems depend on different things. So
define instant.
This is the thing. There's a lot of things in the FCOM that you read and you read the chapter and you go, and is there another chapter or is that it? Because I need more detail, which is what we go and we strive to do, because there are little immersion things again with the little delays and everything needs to be as you would on the line. And for me personally, when you start up an aircraft, I think this is what many people's first interaction is with a new product. I don't know about yourself. I load it in cold and dark. I do a bit of reading before because obviously you don't want to do something wrong. And then you do a setup of the aircraft. And we want that first experience to be someone, and as soon as they press that battery on or they start clicking around the plane, they go, this thing means business. This thing is good. And that's what we want. We want that user to immediately be, you know what? My investment in this product was worthwhile. And if I have any questions, I know that I can ask and get good quality feedback from them. And that's what we want. We want that to continue through everything. Because, like I say, I've been let's say positively, I've bought products and explained and installed them and gone, this is brilliant. I love it. I've had that many more times than I've been disappointed, but I've also had some where I've bought them and gone, this is disappointing. This is disappointing. But I've had real positive experiences as well.
You guys sound a lot like IXEG in its earlier days. I still love IXEG, even though their product is a little bit dated. They are starting to work on it, so great on them. But I remember having that experience when I first jumped into the cockpit and I first turned on the battery switch on my old iMac, and just like loving the sounds and like feeling like I was actually there. And it seems like you guys have really I don't know, you can't use strive because that's not the right tense, but it seems like you guys have really strived to do that and make this aircraft feel like a real thing. And that's something that I feel like a lot of people sometimes miss the mark with, is instead of recreating the aircraft in the simulator like you guys are doing, they're just copying what they seem to see and making I don't know. Does that make sense at all?
No, it does.
No, yeah. I completely appreciate what you're saying, and I think again, thank you for your comments on that. And I think the way that I view it is that we as a team, we're trying to do everything as correctly as possible. But there are things that we may overlook and that we may not get down to the T. And I think any developer that has the view of we are going to do everything perfectly, to be quite frank, is just deluded. Because I think in flight simulation and all of this, the only thing we can do is try our best and not make excuses for ourselves. And those are the number two things that I have the understanding of, and how I want to translate this into the product and really give the user and let them define the experience that they have with it. And I think from your view, again, it goes back to, we just want to give them the best experience possible. And if we don't achieve that, then we are ready to have that dialogue with the customer to try and see what we can improve and do things better. But yeah, I mean, thank you, for your comments on that. And I think we're just all really looking forward to bringing this to market.
The thing is with a flight sim as well. Now, this is something interesting because people often say this, right? They go, I flew a full motion X simulator. And they're like, that's just like the real thing. Okay, now those things, they're great. Okay, they're certified, they're fantastic. They're $8 or $9 million plus each. Okay, so they're expensive. They don't fly like the real plane.
Yeah.
They fly nearly like the real plane. They fly enough like the real plane for you to do it, to then go fly and go, oh yeah, fine, yeah, sort of see where it's a bit different, blah, blah, blah. But there's a common thing, and if you've talked to any pilots before, it's the same thing. You learn to fly the plane, the real plane, and you learn to fly the sim.
Yep.
So, as Ubaid was saying in terms of developer, if someone says, our plane in X-Plane flies just like the real thing, really? It's like, really? Does it? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think you've tried your best, or we are going to try our absolute best. But if an $8-9 million simulator still doesn't fly quite like the real plane because of the physical limitations of simulation in general, then there are always going to be areas where you can improve or will fall short, and we'll have that dialogue. But it's an interesting one because, interestingly, obviously the only experience I have is with the 320 family. You can tell the 320 flies amazing in the full flight sims. It's like where Airbus gave them a data package and went, there you go. And then they flew it in the sim and went, wow, isn't it amazing? Even in wind, it flies brilliantly. Then you fly it on the line and you go, it's not quite what it does. It's kind of close, but not really. Like in a very windy day, it's nothing like the simulator. Completely different, you know.
We talked to V1 Simulations a few episodes
Oh,
ago,
okay.
and he's a real world A320 pilot as well, and he was talking about his first experience in the simulator versus his first experience in real life, and how he just planted the landing because the simulator like gave him one thing, but then actually doing it just changed his experience so much. Because
it does.
I mean,
it does.
you can't. I mean, at this juncture, we can't replicate real life, so we just have to get as close as we can to it, you know.
Exactly, and that's what we're aiming to do, you know, and that's what we're gonna try and strive for. But if someone does say it's just like the real plane, then okay, well, you tried, but it is. Well, if it is, well done. You know, give whoever makes the plane a call, because they want to put that in an $8 million sim, and they're golden. But you know, I know developers have done an incredible job inside the simulation platform. They really have, but. Yeah, if the you know, the multi-billion-dollar corporations who make sims professionally still can't quite get it right, and there was actually an interesting change recently where a company, they were actually talked about because the engineers for the sims, they calibrate them. So each sim, you have 4 in a row, they all fly slightly differently.
Mm-hmm.
so it's like, anyway. So yeah, that's a whole other topic.
Well, here's a general question for you guys. We're talking about flying and simming. How often do you guys get to actually fly a simulator, P3D, FSX, X-Plane? Do you have any time to do that, and do you do that?
Well, that's this question is going to make me very sad. Unfortunately, you know, with the recent times and, you know, recent development, you know, it's really, really enjoyable. But, you know, we personally don't get a lot of time to sim, but, you know, we are monitoring the market. You know, there are certain things that we are looking forward to. But no, personally, I haven't had much time to do any simming lately. I mean, what about you, Cameron?
Well, I do a lot, but it's all development.
Yeah.
So I do.
It's all our own plane.
I am cranking those hours up. It's like I am there like dedicated, but I'm not doing the flight that I want to do. I'm doing a flight to test the system, and then if I get halfway through and I've done the test, then I just close the sim. So, and it doesn't really feel like a satisfying flight because I'm just trying to fix stuff or do things or check things or whatever. I'm doing a lot of flying, but not what I want to go. And I'm actually really looking forward to that day when the A300 is finished and it's, you know, been released, or we're really close to release, and I can go, you know what? I'm going to do a flight I want to do. It's like, I want to go somewhere and I'm going to do a cold and dark. I'm going to load it up. I'm going to go there. And I really can't wait for that. But occasionally you get glimpses of, you get caught up in development. You know, you're doing this, you're testing that. And occasionally I've done stuff, and it's quite funny. It's happened to a few other developers as well, where you think, why isn't that working anymore? And then you look on the overhead and you're like, I forgot to turn it on. So the plane gets more and more advanced, and you're like, because I made a mistake. Because, like, for example, when a system isn't implemented, you don't turn it on. You forget, because it doesn't matter. It has no effect. Then when it's implemented and you start flying, you're like, I didn't turn it on. Now it has an effect. Whoops.
Wow.
I did it once where I took off. I was like, why is the airplane not rolling? And it's because the hydraulics were off. The spoiler control system was off, which is, again, the Airbus A300, you can turn the spoilers off. Why you'd want to do that, I don't know, but...
So we recently posted an article that was talking about optimization and how that is actually a large issue that exists for quite a few X-plane aircraft that are still on OpenGL and are not focusing towards moving towards Vulkan for X-plane 11. I'm sure
Great
that
article, by the way.
Yeah, I
Thank
thought
you.
so too.
Yeah.
It was a really good article. Like I was reading it, and I was like, I did learn a lot. It's really good. Yeah.
So I didn't write that, but I'll pass it on.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's definitely something that I thought about quite a bit, because there's always this discussion about performance, how some aircraft perform better than others, and after reading that article, it totally made sense why some didn't perform better than
Sure.
others. And I've spoken about this like a few times. I do some development myself off and on, and I've recently started to do game development here and there, and I actually learned the fundamentals of how you optimize stuff, because I didn't actually know what it meant to optimize a product. Whenever you looked at bug fixes and it said optimizations for this thing, I didn't really know what that meant, but now I do. How are you guys looking in the future to optimize the A300 and the A380 to make sure that it runs properly with Vulkan, and also just other future versions of X-Plane, whatever that may
I mean,
entail?
I think based on the article and what we've had, just to put it out there, we're very happy to announce that the FPS on the A300 is absolutely amazing
Yeah.
on all systems so far that we've seen. No issues whatsoever. We are also conducting testing on the new X-Plane 11.50 beta version using Vulkan. And no issues so far yet to report on that side of things either. So
Oh,
both
nice.
things are working in a good manner, and the FPS is really good. But to answer your question, I think it's a really hard one. We always had optimization as a phase of development, but we're nearing the end now, and we haven't really had to do any. It was just modeled and textured with using a decent amount of polygons, ensuring that the amount of sheets we're using are appropriate, not going overboard with them, just making sure that all those things are kept in mind at the end goal for the end user. And the outcome has been fantastic performance. So I think from that side of things, it all worked out really well. But it is something that we're always keeping in mind, because again, you know explaining with certain add-ons can be quite resource intensive, and we want to ensure that we're not completely ruining the experience either. But for the A300, and we're in a position to say that the FPS is going to be quite good across all systems.
I'm happy to hear that.
Happy to hear. I'm not going back to X-Plane 11.4. I'm all X-Plane 11.5 now. That's
I
it.
feel you. Um, Continuing on with this future conversation, what is the future for iniBuilds with FS 2020 around the corner, and also the rest of your products that are on P3D? What do you guys see being your future?
So I think we get asked this question a lot, and I think anyone that is commenting in a position to comment on MSFS 2020 without looking at some the SDK and developer kits, I find questionable, because how can a developer comment whether they're going to bring something to the sim if they've not seen anything of how to develop for it? So I think we can't make a comment. We simply don't know, and like the consumer, we don't know whether it is obviously there is something there. Whether it's the future is another question. The way that I like to respond to this question is we're focused on doing certain things now for the X-Plane market. There is no conversation that we are discussing internally about MSFS 2020, because you'd be silly not to. But I guess in commenting of whether we're going to be developing for it, we haven't seen the SDK. We're not in active conversations with Microsoft, and therefore cannot comment. And we're in the boat that a lot of developers are in, of we've just got to wait and see, and see how that develops, and how the market is. And I think for now we really want to focus on our current projects, the A300 freighter, and the A380, and there is also to a project off the back of the A300 that has not been announced yet.
Okay.
So I think the focus is very much on X-Plane, with Microsoft on the horizons for a conversation to be had at a later time. I guess is the best answer to that. But I think for now, our focus is on Explain and the
Yeah,
projects
because
that we've announced.
for myself as well, like Explain is, like I said, I first got involved with it with Explain 10, and it grew on me massively. Then I was like, I really like this platform. I just wish there were more airliners. I think that's a conversation I'm sure you've had many times with
Yeah.
people, like want more airline, because the IXCG, I have a little bit of time, not in the real aircraft, but on the full motion simulators. I did like a conversion course on them, so I knew it reasonably well, and I enjoyed the IXCG when it was in X-Plane 10. I really did, and it made me go, wow, there's a real massive potential for this platform. And I think with X-Plane 11, and especially with the Vulcan beta, it shows that the X-Plane 11 platform is really strong, and it's going to get stronger over time, as we always knew. But it's going from strength to strength, and I think that's why, at the moment, that's why we're looking at the X-Plane platform. And when we bring our products to it, I think hopefully more people will come. That's what's the intention.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad to hear you guys say that, because that's what I've been hoping and praying and wishing for. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, before we close up shop, are there any other last things you want to say about your two projects that you haven't mentioned so far that you think would be interesting for people to know, or anything you want us to know, or I don't know, anything you want us to ask?
No, I think we've discussed a lot. I think I'll use this opportunity for those listeners who stayed right to the end. I think we've seen a few questions regarding the passenger. The passenger variant of the A300 is going to be a free addition / upgrade of the main freighter version that will be released. So in theory, a customer would be paying for both a freighter and passenger version. And with both engine variants, the Pratt & Whitney and GE. So I think that is where our main focus is now, and I think that's something that a lot of people can look forward to. The A380 is announced, and that is going to be active development, and watch this space. There's an update coming in the future. But I think there is a project off the back of the A300 that I think a lot of people will be pleased about. That we are also slowly making steps to actively bring forward, which will be the main focus once the A300 is released. But we will keep that a secret for now, and we will hopefully be able to share more information on that soon. But I guess thank you again, everyone, for your time. For the listeners, for being here for more than an hour now. And yeah, I mean, any other questions that you guys had for us that you'd like answered?
Not on my end. How about
No.
you, Norm?
No, I mean, you guys have been more than open with all your answers that we have asked, with all the questions, and given us way more information that we even asked for. So I appreciate the candidness of you guys, just speaking about the product, the development of it, what your customer service experience, your vision of it, what it's going to be like. And that's what we want. That's what we need in the simulator space. And we appreciate it so much. So we're good. Let me just mention that iniBuilds.com is the website. There's so much more that we even get a chance to talk about because of this interesting product coming up. But if you guys go to iniBuilds.com, they have way more things that they do and are a part of, even sound pack for the 747 default plane in X-Plane. I mean, many things, but I just wanted to mention that. But thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
No, thank you for the shout out. And likewise, to really put into practice what we mentioned. If anybody has any questions, of anything, put it in the comments. Contact us directly, and we're very much happy to have a conversation with you regarding anything that any listener may have a question or query about. So thank you once again.
Thank you guys so much for being on the show.